Looking for tips to boost your SAT score? I can give you some right now that are probably going to instantly boost your score. You can plug in numbers if you don't know how to do the equation. Use the graphs to figure out the function and use the graphing function on your calculator if you don't know how to solve. Use similar answer choices, so answer choices that are extremely similar, to eliminate other choices. But I could give you all of those and you could instantly apply them to boost your score. But what that teaches you is a way of doing the problem that doesn't really involve knowing the skill. And this won't work all the time. The only thing that's really going to get you to those extreme high levels of score that you need to really squeeze out to get above, like 15, 20 on the SAT, you're going to need these tactics that actually are going to benefit you. So this teaches you the wrong way to encounter the SAT. It's not with strategy, but it's with the actual SAT itself. And if you actually care about getting that high score, this video is for you. So hi, I'm Karthik. These are SAT math tips for a perfect score in 2023. All right. So first of all, if you actually care about perfection, those tips are going to be horrible for you. You can still know them and apply them if you don't know the question. So you have this fail-safe plan for all the preparation you do. If it fails on one type of question, you can still use these strategies and potentially increase the chance that you get that question correct, right? But this is what you should actually care about. Mastery. You should care about mastering every single skill. So think about this for a second. Just close your eyes, imagine, right? If you had practice with every single thing that is tested, you've practiced it so many times and you know all the concepts and you can name every single formula, you've memorized every single thing, and you've taken loads of practice question exams and just studied them relentlessly. Then do you think it's reasonable to expect yourself to do well on every single question if you know every single question's concept, idea, and how to encounter it, and what's the fast way to encounter it after practicing that question like 20 different times with 10, 20 different scenarios? Don't you think it's reasonable to expect that you're going to do well on every question, right? So our goal should be moving closer to that ideal version of ourselves, right? Focus on what can we actually do to get there, right? If you consider that to be something that is a reasonable, logical statement, that if you were to do something like that, you can reach there. You might not even have to reach there to get to the upper ends of score. So how do we actually get to that stage where we're practicing in a way that aligns closely to that, right? Well, it's almost in the description itself, but how do we perfectly practice, right? Because that's going to be a key tenet to focusing on how we get better. So it's actually extremely simple to know what concepts you need to focus on in math. And the reason why this is because math is so logical and conceptual, right? It doesn't involve you could argue that it's the same thing for reading, that it is logical and conceptual, but it's more about finding the specific information. And there's no skill or application that you need to learn and master. It's just a matter of repeating that practice. With math, that's not really the case. There are specific skills, and if you know them and you have good practice with them, you can fully perform on a certain test or exam, right? If for a question like a test on quadratics, if you fully master everything about quadratics, the special cases, everything that you would potentially need to know, you would do well on that exam, right? So let's take that concept and that approach to the SAT. There are a list of skills, you can find that on Khan Academy or the SAT official website. And Khan Academy I like better because instead of listing like the general idea, like it'll be heart of algebra, it won't list every specific concept. You have to search a little deeper within the SAT website to find that. So that's why I like Khan Academy, because it just lays them out all in front of you, and it has videos of easy and hard examples of every single one of those. So you need to focus on those specifically, right? But you might already know a lot of the concepts. You don't have to learn them. You're probably already doing well in your own practice, in comparison to like everybody taking the SAT. If you're watching this video, you're probably doing moderately well. So how do we actually go forth into that idea of pushing to perfection? How do we know what to study then? It's about the questions you get wrong, right? And you should take practice sections in math often to constantly get wrong answers so you can go back and review them and know what to review next in between the next time you take a practice session, right? That's how you perfectly practice. And if we go back to that perfect logical example of ourselves that fully masters the section, right? If you practice that type of mistake that you make, right? You make a list of the mistake, you make a list of the type of problem, you learn the concept of the problem again, you review it a bunch of times, and you go to the SAT suite you go to the SAT suite bank of SAT questions, and then you focus on what problems are in there that you need to focus on, you will do well over a long period of time. Doing a bunch of mistakes and reviewing them with that framework, you're going to perform so much better on those, move them from a 50% accuracy to a 95% accuracy, and that's going to radically boost your score. You need, what this does, right? What this framework is basically trying to tell you is you need to understand your gaps and you need to crush those gaps. All right. So improving your timing. You might know the question, you might fully understand it. You might be doing that framework, but you notice that you get a little bit of a time crunch. And while that's like not the most common of issue, it's something that you need to address. And even if you don't experience problems with time, there are questions that you could dedicate more time to as a result of knowing how to do different questions faster. So let's say you struggle with a certain type of question. How much would it benefit you if you now suddenly had 3 more minutes to focus on that question? How about 5 more minutes? What if we shaved like 10 seconds off of every question? Or what's actually more realistic and what's going to happen, you're going to realize you've been spending a minute 30 on one question that you could actually spend like 20 seconds on. And I find this so common with people that I tutor, that there's problems that they have specifically that they don't fully understand the shortcuts and the patterns that you need to be able to identify in order to cut the pattern. So a common one of these is like with algebraic questions, where they'll have an expression like 2x plus 4 equals 100. What is 6x plus 12, right? And normally most people would encounter and solve for x, when in reality you can just multiply the whole equation by a factor of 3 and get that the new equation just equals 300, right? And it never asks you for what x is. The SAT almost never asks you for what the variable is that they're trying to get you to solve. They try to ask you for like what it is in another expression. So finding those shortcuts between linking expressions, right? And whether that's with quadratics, whether that's difference of squares, anything like that, you need to figure out how to solve those kinds of questions, right? So how do we get faster, by ourselves, right? We need to figure out what questions we're too slow on first. And we can do that basically with understanding how much time we have in total and per question time, right? So I think all the questions on the SAT are somewhat designed to take the same amount of time. They're not designed for one to be extremely long, like 10 minutes, and the rest to be like 10-second questions. They're designed to be roughly the same in time. So if you're spending an awful amount of time on one question, that's more than the total time division, which is like the amount of questions you have and the total amount of time that you get, and you divide, and that's your time per question. And if you're going like 1.5, 2 times, 3 times that for a certain question, that might be way too much, right? So how do we figure out if we're too slow? You use that framework to figure out if you're going over. So how do we get faster, right? There are always going to be shortcuts. And whether that shortcut is with actually learning the method and getting good at it, and then you speed up the process, right? You're able to understand what you need to do way faster. Or there's a certain shortcut, like I just gave in the algebra example, where you can cut time by just multiplying or finding the common factor. And how you do that is actually extremely difficult. It requires a lot of practice with that kind of question and a lot of pattern recognition. So you need to be able to put in the volume, right? Because what you lack in pattern recognition, you can make up in volume, right? You can do it a bunch of times and you will eventually find the pattern, rather than having excellent problem recognition, and be able to recognize the pattern instantly, because nobody has that ability. Nobody can just look for patterns instantly, or you wouldn't be watching this video. If you could find patterns instantly with everything, you wouldn't need to watch this video. So understand that you can fight this innate ability of you not being able to do it quickly with just the sheer amount of volume that you work. Okay. So how can you boost your score faster than others? So one thing, just off the slides, don't even pay attention to the slides right now, is just doing this effective practice and committing to it. If you just do that, you will boost your score faster than other people, right? Because when I say boost your score faster, I'm implicitly implying better than other people, right? Improving your score faster than other people. Because it's, at the end of the day, it's a comparison game. It's like an SAT comparison game. You're trying to score better than the person that you're competing with for college admissions, right? And I don't mean this in a competitive nature with your friends and such, because one other person out of the 2 million that take it every year isn't going to make a difference. But in a general broad sense, you're trying to get better than the other person, right? So if I just imagine that there's this competitor who's just like me, right? But they shouldn't be working more than me. They shouldn't be working harder than me. If you can do that and commit to yourself that, you will score better than that imaginary person. Now, back to the slides is this idea of one more set of eyes is more powerful than yours, right? When you're observing something and we're asking for help, ask for help. So many people take this as just like a personal challenge and doesn't realize that there's so many online resources you can use, online question boards, videos like this. You can ask your parents if they're any good at math. You can ask school teachers. I'm sure they'll be happy to help you, after school or like in whatever like time period. If you just have some quick questions, they might be able to help you and they'll be happy to help you. That's literally their job, right? Your friends who are also taking the SAT, who have had better like scores in their math, ask them where they got their resources, where they got that help, what did they do? Anyone who has experience with the SAT, they're going to be a useful resource for you. Consult outside people because their knowledge plus yours is better than just yours. Make sure that they get the answer right, of course. And then, but if they have a good method, you can adopt their method and shortcut the amount of time that it would take to pattern recognize it for yourself. They have so much practice with all of these problems, right? So because they've just been explaining it over and over again, right? And that's like your friends who are taking the SAT or parents or, people at school, like who teach, any sort of teacher who teaches like the subject that you want, right? They are going to have so much more experience because they have practice teaching those problems, knowing those problems, encountering thousands of them over the course of like every single year that they've been teaching. So anyone like that, consult them. If you can't reduce, like, they can't reduce how much effort that you need to put in to improve. What they aren't going to do is do that, right? But what they will do is save you something that's so much more valuable: time. Time is so much more valuable than your own effort because we have a limited amount of time to prepare for the SAT and we can maximize our effort. But if we can save time, our effort will become so much more powerful. So you need to always be looking for, not just with consulting outside knowledge, but looking for ways to make your time practicing the most effective as possible. Thank you guys so much, and I hope you learned something today.